What's the grossest thing you did in high school? Story 1. I farted in math class freshman year. It was one of those farts that burn like fire when it leaves you. I cleared an entire corner of the classroom out in the middle of a lesson. Girls were screaming. It was chaos. I played it off like it wasn't me. One girl somehow didn't smell anything and was going off about how everyone was acting crazy over nothing, so I proceeded to blame it on her, and everyone believed me. This poor girl went on for the rest of our high school career as the girl who farted the most ungodly fart in history. Not proud of this. Story 2. There was a day that they announced the water was going to be shut off for half an hour, and to please refrain from using the bathrooms except for emergencies. Of course, being gross teenage boys, we thought it would be hilarious to all poop in the same toilet, and imagined a mountain of poop cresting out of the bowl. Lo and behold, after 9 guys all got their turn, it was a disgusting mountain of poop. It was so bad that they had to close the entire bathroom for days just to sort out the plumbing situation. In retrospect, I feel horrible for whoever had to deal with that. In my undeveloped brain, the thought didn't even cross my mind. Story 3. Not so much me, but I was heavily involved in the incident. I came up with my own ghost pepper wings in culinary class and decided to make a batch. These wings were hot AF and drenched in my ghost pepper sauce. Now I added a little too much butter because I was trying to smooth out the sauce a little, and it ended up being more liquid-ish than I liked but still good. Anyways, these wings were hot, and I have a pretty high tolerance, but I could only eat like one wing every 10 to 15 minutes. Well, I finish up and have this sauce left, and one guy bets another guy to drink the sauce. They'd pour it in a cup, and with everyone saying, "No, stop, don't do it," he chugs an entire cup of ghost pepper sauce. Immediately he was yelling and on the floor in pain. We gave him milk to drink, but nothing helped. He ran outside, fell on the ground, then back inside, and was slumped on a table. Eventually he starts trying to make his way to the bathroom, completely unable to talk, and a few of us follow him in there. He goes into a stall, but ends up pooping himself and throwing up everywhere. Of course, being responsible, I'd immediately bail and try not to throw up from what I saw and smelled. In the end, nothing happened. He never got his money, and he stayed for the rest of the day, which surprised me. His mom dropped off clothes for him to change into, and that was it. Story 4. Not high school, but when I was in 7th grade, I would get really nasty sinus infections and would hork some truly gnarly and foul-smelling blobs of thick sinus, gunk out from time to time. Green, yellow, sometimes streaked with brown and a little maroon. Sometimes it would have tough, leathery bits in it. Unfortunately, they'd sometimes come loose in class and I had nowhere to spit it out. We had those desks where the top was just a platform above a squared tub with an open end at your belly area. In desperation to spit it out, I'd slyly fold up a piece of paper into a little envelope and wait till nobody was looking and quickly spit into it. Then I'd put it all the way back into the far end of the desk and leave it there. I never mentioned these sinus infections with the nasty stinking blobs that I sometimes loaded up, and I can't tell you why. Story 5. It was my friends and not me. At the end of my senior year, my friends who were a year younger than me showed me garbage bags they had hidden in a theater department storage closet filled with bottles of pee. They said for the past year, they had been peeing in bottles and were going to keep doing this until the end of senior year and dumped them on the carpet in the school. About 8 months later, they called me and said a janitor found the bottles of pee. Now, like 5 garbage bags full. They said the pee was molding, black, and curdling in the older bottles. Story 6. I wish this was my story. In 10th grade, my buddy drank a 26er of vodka and decided to go to class. He was absolutely wasted. I looked over at him, and he had his hand over his mouth. Puke was starting to coming out between his fingers. He couldn't hold it anymore and proceeded to projectile vomit all over the backs of 3 to 4 girls in front of him. Luckily for him, the teacher was cool as hell and never reported it, nor did anyone in class. Teacher let me take him out of school, and I got him picked up. I'll never forget that. Story 7. There was this bully who used to frighten most of the kids, even teachers, as his grandfather was the chairman of the school's trust fund. Before an important exam, he came to us for study help. We did help, but also gave him a drink laced with laxatives. He gulped it down, and in the middle of the exam, took a massive dump in his pants in the exam room itself. The whole room stank, and they had to cancel the exam itself. The story never died down, and he never bullied another person again. Story 8. This is not my story, but was told to me by a very reliable person. Back in high school, there was this Italian guy, let's call him Tony. Now, Tony was notorious for soggy school lunches. It would normally be the leftovers from the night before on bread or very soggy tuna mayo sandwiches. One day during class, the teacher had her back to the class and was writing on the board. This teacher, let's call her Mrs. Emily, had quite a perm/afro going on. While she was writing on the board, the entire class would try to throw little bits of erasers and get them stuck in her hair. She was kinda clueless and would carry on like nothing was happening. Enter Tony. Sitting at the back of the class, he pulled out his lunch to each. Being the class clown, takes a massive bite of this soggy tuna mayo leftover peppers combo. After chewing it for a few seconds, he spits what's in his mouth into his hand and proceeds to try and throw the half-chewed, soggy tuna pepper sandwich on the board near to where Mrs. Emily is writing. As he launches his concoction in his hand, the teacher stops writing and turns around at the perfect time to take that soggy half-chewed sandwich straight on the nose, mouth, and eyes. She literally had a nervous breakdown there and then, was off from teaching for over 3 weeks, and the entire class got caned. Story 9. My first day of high school, I was given a locker in the main building on the second floor. I used it a few times in the first few weeks, but over time I stopped using it and shared a locker with a buddy on the other side of campus. I also had a larger locker in the band hall, also on the other side of campus. Fast forward to the end of the school year, and we had the locker clean out. I cleaned my band locker and remembered my old locker, which I hadn't used since the first few weeks of school. I even had to go get the combo from the office since I forgot what it was. There were a bunch of other kids, they're all around cleaning out their lockers, and as I approached, they were all looking at me like I was growing another head. I start fumbling with the lock and a girl asks more like a statement, "That's your locker?" I was like, "Yeah." "You must have left something in there, 'cause it's been stinking all year." My brain was trying to remember what I could have possibly left in there as the lock popped, and I pushed up the latch and pulled it open. It didn't pull easily, like something was folded back. I got the thing open, and at first I could make heads or tails of what I was looking at. Then it hit me. Both the stench and the moldy-looking old lunch bag in the middle of the locker. Some sort of mold had grown all in the locker and was on the door. People crowded around me looking in. Everyone was totally grossed out. One girl was downright angry with me for creating a health hazard. At that point, I did the only thing I could think of and shut the locker and book it out of there. The girl was like, "You gonna clean it out?" I said, "Yeah, gonna go find something to clean it with. Be back in a minute." I never went back. Never seen anything like that before or since. Story 10. Not me, but something I witnessed. In 6th grade, I sat beside a kid who was kind of looked down on because he was chubby, and I think he may have been developmentally delayed. He was just a bit of a weird kid. Not because he was chubby or developmentally delayed. His social skills were just awkward. Anyways, I'm sitting in class and he sneezes, covering his face with his sleeve that's covering his hand. I happen to glance over at a glob of snot that flew out of his face. I try not to gag, I hate snot. And then to make it even worse, I watched him eat it. I literally had to turn away and try not to puke for the rest of the class. Story 11. For senior prank, a couple buddies, I bought a bag of fish. We put them in a crappy plastic bag and put them above the ceiling tile in the senior lounge on the last day off school for the next year's seniors to deal with. Halfway through the school year, the following year, it rotted through the tile and onto the jocks table while they were eating. Reason being was that a group of those at the time juniors destroyed my friend's car, and the school didn't do anything because the main accused were twin brothers whose father was the principal. They were on the football team, and we knew exactly where they would be sitting the following year after we left. Coming back for the homecoming game as alumni was legendary. Most of us returned and had t-shirts made with a trout on the front and "Never Forget" on the back. Story 12. In middle school, I spat in a guy's face after he hit me in the head with his lunchbox. He claimed afterwards that he had forgotten about the metal thermos in there. It all happened in front of a girl I was dating, so I felt I had to retaliate in some way. But as the other kid had repeatedly mentioned over the school year, he was highly trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I was a 90-pound sack of skin and bones. So instead of hitting him, I just spat right in his face point blank. Then he beat the heck out of me. Good times. Story 13. Wasn't that bad in my opinion, but this stuck-up girl in high school gave the whole class hard candy except for me. I asked if I could have one too, and she smirked, pulled a piece out of her mouth, and said, "This is my last piece." So I snatched it and popped it in my mouth and told her thanks. Look on her face was priceless. Story 14. Class got suspended, so while I was waiting for my mom to pick me up, I got an Oreo frap from the canteen. I forgot to throw it and left it in my locker. 3 weeks later, I found it, and it smelled like heck, and there was mold. I didn't have the guts to throw it out, but one of my friends put it in a vacant locker in the classroom, and we left it there for months. We forgot about it until the last week of school when our homeroom teacher wanted to clear our lockers. When we opened it, bugs were coming out, and the classroom smelled terrible for an hour, and some classmates threw up. But in the end, we didn't get in trouble. Story 15. Not me, but I was in the class when it happened. Dude dumped in a teacher's thermos. The driver's ed teacher left her thermos in the back of the room. This guy found it, put it in his bag, and went to the restroom. When he came back, he was proudly holding the thermos. Teacher says, "Oh, thanks, you found my thermos," and puts it on her desk. It only took her about 5 minutes to realize he pooped in it. Story 16. Not me. Knew a guy who always drank too much. Had a bumper sticker that said, "In search of the eternal buzz." In the morning, he woke up buck naked in the middle of a field way out in the country. He had no idea how he got there or what had happened. Had to walk naked to the first house he could find and ask to call someone. Story 17. Got in a prank war with another kid where we'd leave stuff in each other's locker. One Thursday, I left my liverwurst sandwich. Unbeknownst to me, his family had left for Christmas break early, so he didn't find it for 2.5 weeks. You could smell it all the way down the hall, and I'm pretty sure it was on the verge of sentience. Story 18. I was meeting a girl from another school at the end of the school day. I kept having tuna reflux from a sandwich I ate at lunch. I panicked at the end of the day when my breath stank, and I picked a few pieces of discarded chewing gum from under the desk and chewed. The meat was successful, by the way. Story 19. Ate a jar of habanero salsa for a $50 dare. Has the worst burning liquid feces. The smell was making people gag as it wafted out into the hallway. I took a series of cold showers because my back passage hurt so bad, and I spent the next day at home. I bought God of War 2 with the money. Story 20. Not me, but my ex-best friend and another one of my friends had a massive argument. Can't even remember what it was about, but they hate each other. So they decided to have a food fight. Manky cheese yogurt thrown across the canteen and at each other. My ex-best friend poured pesto in my other friend's hair. They were a yogurty, cheesy pesto-y mess. None of us got done because the security cameras were broken, and no one fesses up. That's a wrap for this video. Make sure to leave your relatable story down in the comments. I would love to make a video on them. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.